Billionaire CEO's shocking test of a shy Maid reveals an amazing, touching transformation that Eva stood at the base of the grand staircase, her gaze rising to the intricate chandelier that sparkled with wealth. This luxurious mansion, a monument of affluence in Silicon Valley, was a world she barely grazed the edges of. The polished marble beneath her feet felt foreign, like the life she yearned to escape. Every sweeping motion of her broom echoed reminders of her modest upbringing, an upbringing where dreams felt heavy and unreachable. Yet, her grandmother's words haunted her, urging her to aspire beyond floors to mop and dust to chase away. What if her chance was finally here? Her thoughts spiraled as she dusted the bookshelf in Jack Harrington's towering office. Whispers floated in, luring her into the tense energy of a conversation that sent shivers of uncertainty through her. Jack, renowned for his cutthroat tactics, was dissecting a potential deal like a hungry predator. His sharp voice cut through the air. "In business, hearts are useless," he declared to a colleague, and her own heart seized at the audacity of the sentiment. Was he one of those men her grandmother had warned her about? Eva's mind raced. The stark contrast between his ruthless ambition and her meekness gnawed at her. Suddenly, his piercing eyes locked onto her. She flinched, her cheeks heating as if caught in a lie. Jack's gaze softened, curiosity dancing amidst his stern demeanor. "You," he said, breaking the weight of his business discussion. "I've seen you here. You have a certain presence." Her breath hitched in disbelief. Could an insignificant maid pique the interest of a billionaire? Then came his proposition, like thunder in the silence. "I will fund your education if you can pass my tests. They measure creativity, character. Show me who you truly are." The room spun, her instincts a whirlpool of excitement mixed with apprehension. With every pulse echoing in her ears, she felt the weight of 1,000 judgments, the consequences of stepping beyond her station. Could she challenge the social barriers that wielded power over their lives? Taking a breath, she felt a flicker of determination spark within her. Accepting lost in the thrill of potential, she wondered if she was ready to unveil layers of herself left untested. Desperation battled with fear, leaving her unsteady. Could she trust the intentions of a man drenched in ambition? Was she simply a pawn in his game? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each test Jack crafted surfed the edge between revealing and daunting. She faced scenarios beyond her comfort zone, innumerable layers stripped away, unveiling latent creativity she never knew resided in her soul. Yet, each challenge simultaneously birthed an avalanche of self-doubt. What if he sought someone from his world? Someone who already spoke the language of success? The thought sank deep, gnawing at her resolve like a slow poison. Just as confidence began to swell, a rumor drifted through the mansion, teasing a dark secret from Jack's past. What if he was not the person she had started to respect? Would the truth shatter the delicate bond forged amidst the mockery of uncertainty? What would it mean for her aspirations? Torn between the desire for independence and the haunting shadow of betrayal, she grappled with the unresolved tension. Somewhere within the mansion's echo, her heart quivered. Would she dare to confront Jack, or would ignorance shield her from the truth she feared? The air crackled. The answer lay just beneath the surface. With each test set by Jack, Eva's world twisted in on itself, generating a spiraling tension that both thrilled and terrified her. His initial compliments had been disarming, igniting a light within her that she had kept dim for too long. Yet, with every new challenge, that light flickered precariously against the shadows of doubt. She tackled scenarios that required articulation and wit, sci-fi concepts that pushed her imagination to heights she had only dreamed of, and even exercises in negotiation that felt too calculated for someone of her background. One afternoon, Jack had arranged for a mock pitch session, simulating the pressure of a boardroom environment. Standing in front of an ornate oak table, Eva could hardly breathe as she glanced at the wealthy executives hired to assess her. Their eyes, filled with skepticism, felt sharp as daggers. "Here is your chance, Eva. Show us what you've got," Jack said, leaning back against the wall, arms crossed, an unyielding presence. Her heart raced, its frantic rhythm echoing her deepest desire to succeed. She stumbled through her presentation, her hands trembling, words ragged on her tongue. But then she remembered who was listening. Jack, a titan of industry, stood before her not just as a mentor, but as evidence of transcending limitations. She straightened, tapping into the flicker of strength ignited within. With fresh resolve, she dove into the pitch, emphasizing innovation and the human connection technology could foster. As she spoke passionately about her vision, she transformed from an intimidated Maid into a confident advocate for her ideas. That moment when she saw Jack nod approvingly seemed to suspend time. For the first time, the apprehension faded, replaced by a burgeoning sense of self-worth. But as the applause faded, the murmur of fear returned. Whispers about Jack's past rattled, like an errant breeze, through her thoughts. What lay beneath his polished exterior? Was the opportunity he offered a stepping stone or a trap? The juxtaposition of her burgeoning interest in him and this new caution created an internal conflict that was almost agonizing. Uncertainty brewed as she navigated her emotional landscape. She needed to know the truth behind the rumors. A spark of audacity propelled her forward. If she aspired to leave behind the shadows of her impoverished upbringing, then she must confront the man who held the key to her aspirations. The next day, amid the sunlit splendor of the mansion's gardens, she approached him. Jack leaned against the marble fountain, a charismatic figure, yet cloaked in layers of secrecy. "Can we talk?" She summoned the courage to ask, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Jack turned, an eyebrow raised, curiosity lacing his expression. "About what?" "About you," she replied, holding his gaze unwaveringly. The vulnerability of that moment hung between them, a palpable tension that charged the air. She knew a confrontation with him could unravel everything she had built, but the prospect of moving forward without clarity felt far worse. As she steeled herself for the conversation that could redefine her path, a compelling warmth surged through her. She realized that uncovering the truth about Jack was not merely about him, it was about her own evolution. Whether it spurred advancement or heartbreak, she was now refusing to remain silent. Would she uncover the man behind the CEO facade, or would she find the adoration she felt simply shattered by betrayal? The weight of the impending revelation loomed, the possibility of transformation glinting tantalizingly ahead. Eva felt the intoned petals of the garden-esque flowers brush against her as she stood before Jack, weighty uncertainty coiling in her gut. There he was, an enigmatic figure seemingly oblivious to the turmoil brewing within her. The moment hung like a pendulum. She sensed both an opportunity and a risk, recognizing that this confrontation could either solidify her ascent or lead to her descent back into silence. "Why do you want to know about me?" Jack's voice cut through the stillness. There was an edge beneath his polished exterior, a fortress built around years of implicit judgments and experiences. "Because I need to trust you, and trust is built on knowing the truth," she responded, seeking to project confidence while grappling with the tremors chasing the edges of her composure. Each word was a step forward, a progression she so desperately craved, but with every heartbeat echoed the nagging fears of undoing everything she had achieved. Jack straightened, arms uncrossing as the gravity of her inquiry sank in. He studied her, the intensity of his gaze forcing Eva to confront herself. "Your trust and my past aren't so easily intertwined." The cadence of his voice shifted slightly, betraying a hint of vulnerability. In that instant, the urgency shifted inside her, morphing into a driving resolve. Everyone has a past, Jack, but it can't define us unless we let it. I've come from nothing. I know what it means to fight to be seen. You're offering me your world, but I need to know if it's built on truth or deception. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, and within that moment, she sensed the door to deeper understanding opening, if only slightly. She was cutting through the layers of his facade with tangible authenticity, the same authenticity that had ignited her passion during the pitch. Then let us talk, he finally replied, his tone easing. But if we're going to do that, you need to promise me you won't turn away at what you find. The weight of his proposition loomed heavy, marking a point of no return for both of them. As Jack revealed parts of his narrative, an arduous climb to success riddled with cutthroat decisions and moral compromises, Eva felt each word unravel her preconceived notions about him. He spoke of ruthless board meetings, cutthroat competitors, and the sacrifices made in the name of ambition. Yet, there lay a deeper conflict within him, an underlying yearning for connection lost amid the clang of wealth and status. As his story unfolded, she realized that this man bore scars not dissimilar from her own, albeit differently acquired. The fears suddenly shifted in her chest. It was no longer solely apprehension, but the profound recognition of shared human experience. Sometimes, I wonder if I've lost myself in the pursuit, he confided, his eyes clouded with introspection. I've become someone I hardly recognize. Her heart ached for him, but mirrored in his struggle was her own. The thought of surrender, of cracking under pressure, loomed vast. Could she really trust him to be transparent with himself as much as she was demanding? Would this newfound connection serve as a bridge to understanding or simply reveal deeper chasms of betrayal? In that instant, something shifted. She didn't need to carry the burden of doubt alone. I refuse to be defined by my past, she declared, channeling the strength of their collective hardships. So neither should you. Let us redefine our paths together. As Jack nodded slowly, she watched a flickering flame ignite within him, mirroring her own growth. As the evening sun cast warm golden hues on the garden, their hopes intertwined with a tenuous thread of possibility. But lurking still was the pulsating tension, the question of whether their emerging alliance could withstand the pressure of their combined realities. The air thickened as both grappled with the implications of their confessions, and as the last light dimmed, she whispered, "But what if we fail?" Jack's eyes held hers, the tension thickening. "It's not failing that frightens me. It's the thought of living in denial, of losing what we could become." Eva squared her shoulders, heart pounding against the promise of transformation. But as night closed in, the tenuous connection they forged posed a perplexing dilemma. Could this alliance thrive against the winds of their pasts, or would it shatter under the weight of truth? With the horizon ahead uncertain, both stood at the precipice of a monumental decision, a convergence of paths poised for either revelation or ruin. Eva woke the next morning in a haze, her mind swirling with thoughts of Jack's revelations. The sun streamed through her window, intensifying the colors of her modest bedroom. It was familiar, yet today felt unique, a pivotal turning point inching closer with every moment. She had opened a gate she never meant to, and now, crossing it felt inevitable. An hour later, standing in front of her bathroom mirror, she scrutinized her reflection. There was a flicker of resolve behind her eyes. She recognized the shadows of self-doubt lingering around the corners of her mind, but they were fragile, like wisps of mist ready to disperse. "I can do this," she whispered, more for her own sake than to convince anyone else. As she prepped for work, she felt a surge of energy. The routine motions of tying her hair back and adjusting her clothes transformed into symbolic acts, a pledge to embrace the challenge ahead. The figure looking back at her was someone fueled not by fear, but by uncharted determination. When she arrived at the office, the air buzzed with chatter, but Eva felt encased in her own bubble, her thoughts racing. Still, that gut feeling from the previous evening pulsed through her, this was no longer just about her. It was about forging a connection, understanding both the man and the vision behind the empire Jack was building. She could be part of something transformative. As the morning unfolded, she intuitively sensed Jack's presence before she even saw him. He stepped into the open space that served as a common area for brainstorming sessions, his expression revealing that he was also navigating through the remnants of last night's vulnerability. "Eva," he called, motioning for her to come over. The casual demeanor he often wore felt stripped away, revealing a more earnest man beneath. "What is up?" she asked, forcing a casualness she didn't fully feel. But with each unconscious smile that appeared on her face, she recognized that she was shifting from spectator to participant in her own narrative. "I wanted to discuss our project further. There is so much potential here, but I believe we need to take some risks." The challenge warmed her. "What did you have in mind?" "I think we should present a new pitch, one that highlights our authentic stories, intertwine both of our experiences. It's raw, but it's real. It could resonate more than any carefully crafted proposal." Her pulse quickened. This was a leap. "You want to share our backgrounds as part of a business strategy?" "Yes. Let us not hide anymore. The strengths we develop from adversity can be powerful, and people can relate to struggle." Jack's gaze was unwavering, igniting something inside her that she hadn't felt during their earlier discussions, a promise of authenticity that both praised and frightened her. "What if revealing too much weakens us? Or what if it strengthens us?" He countered, his intensity mirroring her own rising passion. "This is a chance to bring honesty to the forefront, to break barriers, to transcend corporate culture. It requires courage, but I believe in our story." Eva considered this. The pit of uncertainty screamed for her to retreat. Yet something new, a newfound belief, began to drown out that voice. She bit her lip, grappling with the demand to trust in herself and in Jack. "Okay," she finally said, her voice steadier than before. "Let us do it." The collaborative tension lingered as they outlined the narrative. With each point they refined, it felt less like a series of business strategies and more like a reclamation of their identities. As they finalized their approach, Jack turned to her, his features softened. "Thank you for trusting me." Eva flashed a knowing smile, emboldened by the collective effort to break free from their pasts. But inner questions still gnawed at her confidence. Was she ready to bare her soul for all to see? The days ahead would test this shared venture, framing a battle steeped in vulnerability. As their pitch loomed closer, a reminder of her old selves lingered, urging her to reconsider her choices. Could she truly transform this? Bond into a force that defied the odds against them? The answer shaped itself with the growing anticipation of their presentation, leaving Eva hovering between fear and hope, a tightrope walk balancing on the brink of her own growth journey. And as the clock ticked down, she prepared herself for the moment when they would either shine or falter amid judgment. After all, the real test was still to come. Would embracing vulnerability lead to their salvation or expose their deepest fears? Eva awoke the next day with the weight of anticipation hanging heavily around her. Today marked the beginning of their ambitious project, a venture that demanded more than just intellect. It required a bold exposition of their very selves. She felt a knot of excitement and trepidation as she prepared for the day, the usual morning rituals infused with purpose. Looking into the mirror, she took a long breath, calling upon the confidence she had unearthed within the past few days. "You're more than your limitations," the words echoed in her mind, a mantra she desperately needed to believe. As she arrived at the office, the atmosphere buzzed with a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. Gossip flowed freely, but Eva felt detached, like she was on the cusp of something transformative, while everyone else remained tethered to the ordinary. Her resolve was about to be tested, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to pivot in a way she could hardly comprehend. Jack was already in the meeting room when she entered, poring over notes, a furrow apparent on his brow. As she approached, he looked up, his expression shifting to one of reassurance. "Hey," he said warmly. "Nervous?" Maybe a little, she admitted, trying to mask the uncertainty in her voice. Perfectly normal. The key is to embrace it, he replied, his words carrying a warmth that kindled a flicker of courage within her. Together, they went over their presentation, with Jack frequently encouraging her to share snippets of her past and thoughts on their strategy. Each time she spoke, she felt a blend of exhilaration and vulnerability course through her veins. Jack listened intently, and she found that his unwavering attention granted her strength. Your story matters, he reminded her. The emotion you bring is what will connect us to the audience. It's our authenticity that will sell the pitch. But deep within her, self-doubt stirred. Would her narrative, the struggles, the dreams really matter in this setting? What if it was too raw, too personal? Yet the thought of stepping back felt like a denial of the new identity she was beginning to form. As the minutes ticked down to their presentation, anxiety coursed through her. Eva stole glances at the clock, each tick drumming a beat of her heartbeat. Would she be able to stand before their colleagues and the board, unveiling the layers she had so carefully guarded? When it was finally time, she felt a rush of adrenaline. Standing before the audience, her pulse quickened. Jack's presence beside her acted as a grounding force, amplifying her resolve. Together, they exchanged a look in unspoken understanding of the risk they both were willing to take. As the pitch began, she spoke about her journey, weaving in personal anecdotes that resonated with vulnerability. Each word served as a thread, binding her and Jack together in a narrative that was both compelling and sincere. She saw jagged breaths and nodding heads as their story unfolded, revealing not just their struggles, but the resilience they cultivated over time. Yet, the moments that transpired during the presentation were not merely transformative for the audience. They cracked open something within Eva. She began to realize that sharing her truth not only liberated her spirit, but fortified her sense of identity. But as they concluded their presentation, applause washing over them, a feeling of dread seeped in. Questions loomed large. What if this exposure backfired? Would she be scrutinized for laying bare her soul? The path ahead felt uncertain, fraught with the possibility of judgment, but also ripe with opportunities for growth. As they stepped off the stage, Jack turned to her, pride and concern mingling in his gaze. Whatever happens next, we're in this together, he said, clasping her shoulder reassuringly. She nodded, but a chill of anxiety brushed against her resolve. Was she truly prepared for the consequences of their bravely exposed vulnerabilities? The fallout from their presentation threatened to surge like a tidal wave. Would their candidness be received as a strength, or would the corporate machine devour them for their honesty? Even as a rush of exhilaration pulsed through her veins, a new journey beckoned. Could she continue to cultivate the courage that had emerged? The shifting tides stood poised to test both her mettle and her resolve, and it was clear that the hardest battles were just beginning. Eva spent restless hours after the pitch, replaying the presentation in her mind, dissecting every word she had spoken and each expression she had encountered. She had stood before her colleagues, bearing her soul, and while the applause felt gratifying, a darker undercurrent of dread lingered. What if her gift of vulnerability became a weapon against her in this unforgiving corporate landscape? The next morning brought a departure from the buzz of the previous day, as the office echoed with the sounds of judgment echoing through whispered conversations. As she settled at her desk, anxiety seeped into her bones. The aftermath hung over her like a storm cloud, dark and threatening. Would her bravery lead to advancement, or would it merely be a dogma to scrutinize? Jack sought her out, concern etched on his face. "Hey, how are you holding up?" he asked, his tone gentle yet probing. Eva forced a smile. "I'm okay, just trying to process everything." Yet her words felt hollow to her own ears. "Listen, I know it feels intense right now," he said, lowering his voice to avoid eavesdroppers. "But vulnerability is strength. You just need to remember that. We've stepped into a different realm now." She nodded, but her heart fluttered with doubt. Was strength indeed what awaited her? Or was she simply placing her hopes on an illusion? How could she navigate the labyrinth that lay ahead when so much seemed to depend upon the reactions of others? As the day progressed, emails poured in, praise from the leadership team, along with constructive criticisms. Yet amidst the well wishes lay troubling sentiments. An underlying question loomed in the feedback: was their approach too personal for corporate culture? A particular email stood out. It was from Dan, a senior executive noted for his unyielding decision-making style. Good presentation, but be cautious of oversharing. We're here to execute business strategy, not personal storytelling. Consider the message you're sending to clients moving forward. The words stabbed deep, igniting a firestorm within Eva. Was she not entitled to be human in this environment? Was there a place for emotion amid spreadsheets and quarterly reports? The familiar knot of insecurity tightened in her gut as she realized the conflict. How could she forge ahead without sacrificing her authenticity? That evening at home, she found herself regarding a blank page, pencil poised awkwardly in her hand. Instead of feeling liberated by her vulnerability, she was paralyzed by fear. Frustrated, she pressed the pencil against the page harder, pushing its lead to the limit, as if squeezing something out of herself that she feared might vanish entirely. In that moment of isolation, a revelation sparked within her. This was not merely about the corporate world. It was about an internal battle far larger than any boardroom pitch. She began to consider how she wasn't just narrating her story. She was affirming her identity as a professional capable of blending both strength and emotional resonance. Could she be the catalyst for change? In a landscape often devoid of humanity, could she become a bridge between authenticity and corporate responsibility? She realized that to fully embrace this new direction, she would have to confront those who might challenge her vulnerability and reconcile her duality. The personal with the professional. As she wrestled with this realization, determination ignited within her. The path would not be easy, but clarity began to take root. The next day would be crucial, and she knew the initial confrontation awaited. It would be her chance to articulate her stance with unflinching conviction. How could she transform the narrative around vulnerability from weakness to a courageous strength? Taking a last breath and brushing down her shirt, Eva steeled herself for the impending formative clash. The time had come to face not just her colleagues, but the lingering specter of self-doubt that shadowed her. Would this confrontation affirm her decision to embrace vulnerability, or would it become an insurmountable barrier? Eva arrived at the office the following morning with a sense of resolve rarely felt before. The usual clamor of the workplace felt muted, the bustling noises receding into a hum as she made her way to the conference room for the scheduled team meeting. Today was not merely a routine gathering. It was a platform for her to redefine the dialogue around her vulnerability. As she entered the room, a mix of apprehension and determination electrified the air around her. Each face turned, expressions shifting from neutral to mildly curious, and, in some cases, visibly cautious. She recognized the tension. Fellow colleagues assessed her next move as if she were a puzzle piece they were eager to place yet apprehensive to grasp fully. Taking her seat, she locked eyes with Dan, who sat at the far end of the table. His critique weighed heavily on her this morning, a reminder of the corporate caution that shadowed authentic human connection. She knew she had to address his concerns while staying true to herself. When the floor opened for discussions, she seized the moment, flushing with both vulnerability and conviction. I want to revisit my presentation from the other day. She began, her heart racing as she spoke. I appreciate the feedback, particularly about my emotional approach, but I believe there is a place for storytelling in our corporate narrative. It's not weakness. It's what makes us relatable. Several heads nodded in tentative agreement, but she felt Dan's eye contact pierce through her defenses. Determined to push through, she continued, "Our clients want to connect with us, not just our product. If we hide behind a screen of numbers and strategy, we risk losing the human element in our relationships." A murmur ran through the room, rippling with uncertainty and curiosity. Eva closed her eyes briefly, drawing strength from the walls of the conference room, willing her voice to rise above the tides of doubt washing over her. Vulnerability can drive empathy, which in turn fosters loyalty and access to deeper insights about our clients' needs. It's a strategy that could strengthen our bottom line rather than threaten it. As she reflected upon her own feelings of anxiety, wondering if she had indeed stepped too far into the emotional abyss, she realized a key aspect of her development. This was about embracing the lessons tied up in her personal experiences. Vulnerability was her tool, not a hindrance, and it opened the door to constructive dialogue. Dan opened his mouth to speak, but she anticipated his response and pivoted. It's daunting to share personal stories in a space like this. I understand that. It requires courage, and it brings us face to face with the reality of who we are. But isn't that what drives us to innovate? To create beyond mere transactions? The silence punctuated her words, time stretching as she awaited the reactions. She held her breath, feeling a growing chemistry in the room. Her colleagues were contemplating her perspective, weighing its feasibility against their own guarded instincts. Finally, Dan broke the silence, albeit cautiously. I appreciate your passion, Eva, but let us not forget the stakes involved. Balancing emotional intelligence with business acumen is tricky. Emotions can cloud judgment. The challenge stirred something within her. That is true, Dan, but it also true that the truest breakthroughs in business come from understanding not just the numbers, but the people behind them. If we remain rigid, we risk stifling creativity and innovation. As the discussion unfolded, something shifted. Colleagues began voicing their own insights. An undercurrent of support blossomed in the discussion. Ideas layered one atop another, each building on the foundation she had laid. When the meeting concluded, Eva caught Jack's eye across the room. He shot her a thumbs up, a radiant smile lighting his face as he approached her. You did it. You stood your ground and changed the game. Her pulse raced, not merely from adrenaline, but from a budding sense of hope. Perhaps today marked a pivotal moment in her quest to meld authenticity with her career aspirations. Could this be the beginning of a new culture, one that embraced emotional transparency rather than scorned it? But even in her triumph, a question loomed large: was this newfound support sustainable, or would she face backlash as time wore on? Each step forward felt precarious. As she gathered her things, a flicker of uncertainty surfaced again. The moment of truth would continue to reveal itself. Eva needed to remain resilient. The struggle was far from over, and within that thought lay a reminder. Transformation would come, but it would test her every step of the way in a landscape still entangled with skepticism. Just as she was making her way out, an unexpected email notification lit up her screen. It popped up with an ominous tone, another message from Dan, and she sensed the gravity behind it. Would he counter her progress, or was he willing to engage further in this critical conversation? Eva hesitated for a moment, her finger hovering over the email notification from Dan. The subject line felt like a gavel landing in a court of law, harsh and definitive. She could almost hear the echoes of the meeting, the burgeoning sense of unity overshadowed by Dan's lingering skepticism. He had been a steadfast stalwart against what he perceived as emotional vulnerability, and she braced herself for his rebuttal. Swiping the notification open, the message was succinct but foreboding. Could we discuss your approach further? I have concerns. The immediacy of his request hinted at a more profound confrontation. While she had gained some ground in their meeting, she knew there was a storm brewing beneath Dan's measured exterior. Instead of feeling disheartened, the weight of uncertainty ignited a flicker of determination within her. This was an opportunity not just to defend her ideas, but to expand upon them. What if she could convert his skepticism into understanding? What if she could turn this personal challenge into a moment of revelation? Arriving at her desk, she took a deep breath and began formulating a response. Each keystroke felt less like a defensive maneuver and more like an invitation to dig deeper. She highlighted the transformational potential of vulnerability in leadership contexts, using corporate examples and anecdotes to lend weight to her argument. After finishing her draft, she paused, reconsidering her tone. Should she reply with the same sternness he often exhibited, or should she embrace her emotionality? Would it disarm him or push him further into his entrenched beliefs? With a calculated little smirk, she chose the latter, confident it would reflect the very narrative she hoped to establish within company culture, the narrative of authenticity. Pressing send, she felt a tide of exhilaration wash over her. In creating this dialogue, she wasn't merely reacting to Dan's critiques. She was actively participating in reshaping her professional landscape. The rest of the day passed in a blur, tinged with anticipation. Eva became acutely aware of the subtle shifts around her. Colleagues who once skirted conversations with her now approached with openness, eager to share stories that resonated with her own journey. After work, she strolled through the park nearby, reflecting not just on the day's events, but envisioning the long-term implications of her drive to redefine vulnerability. It was within those musings that she realized the depth of a fundamental truth. The path she was carving would not be without its pitfalls, but every connection, every shared story stood as a testament to her growth. Rising tides of empathy could not only reshape her relationships, but could potentially revolutionize the company culture she inhabited. When she returned home that evening, her phone pinged again, Dan's name flashing across the screen, this time with a follow-up. Curious to see what lay ahead, she opened the message. Let us meet to discuss this further. How about tomorrow at 10? Her heart raced. The time had come to face the very voice of reason that had challenged her beliefs. Was she ready to engage further and take the risk of reshaping his perspective? The stakes were high, and there was no turning back now. As she prepared to sign off for the night, Eva felt a single thread of anxiety mingle with her determination. The deeper challenge loomed, raw and unwieldy. Could she remain true to her principles and push for change, even in the presence of potential doubt? With that thought lingering, she lay her head down, eyes staring at the ceiling. She would have to confront the reality of the corporate wall still standing firm against her vision of transparency. Tomorrow's meeting could either break her resolve or fortify if she had no way of knowing which direction the conversation would steer. And with that uncertainty resting heavily on her mind, she whispered to herself, this is just the beginning. The next morning, she would face not only Dan, but the potential for a transformation that could reshape everything she envisioned for her career. The sun's first rays poured through the blinds, casting stripes of light across Eva's bedroom. She awoke not to the whir of a daily routine, but to an electric charge in the air around her. Today was not just another day. It was a pivotal moment, a potential tilt of her professional landscape. As she dressed, her heart thrummed not with anxiety, but with insistence, urging her to step forth into the unknown. Every article of clothing felt like armor, enhancing her resolve. She chose a soft blue blouse, inviting yet professional. As she examined herself in the mirror, Eva could almost see the woman she wanted to be, a leader who embodied vulnerability yet commanded respect. Was it possible to embrace both without losing ground? On her commute, she replayed yesterday's strategies in her mind, dissecting potential responses to Dan's critiques. What if he dismissed her insights outright? What if he offered valid points that challenged her own beliefs? Determination surged inside her. She would not merely wait for his words. She would engage him in a dialogue. She needed to confront his skepticism head-on, ready to navigate the complexities of their discussion. Arriving at the office, she took a moment to breathe, feeling the familiar hum of the workplace around her. The chatter, the clatter of keyboards, all of it blended into a soundtrack of possibility. Her mind buzzed with ideas, all centering around the same theme: transformation through vulnerability. At 10 a.m., her heart beat in her ears as she approached the conference room. Each step felt heavy with potential, but also with the weight of expectation. If she faltered here, could she maintain the momentum she had built over the past few weeks? Dan was already seated, an island of calm in the midst of her storm. As she entered, he looked up, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice steady as a well-placed anchor. "Thank you for giving me the chance to discuss this," Eva replied, willing her voice not to waver. She sat down, gripping the edges of the table, channeling her jitters into focus. Dan opened the floor with a few preliminary remarks about his hesitations. "You spoke about vulnerability yesterday, but how do you ensure that the emotional openness doesn't compromise our corporate edge?" His question echoed in her mind, challenging her to dig deeper. Vulnerability isn't about compromising our goals. It's about strengthening our connections, she countered, recognizing the rhythm of the conversation had shifted. As she articulated her thoughts, weaving in examples from successful companies that embraced authenticity, Eva became increasingly animated. The tables turned, and she found herself questioning him. "Why do you think many leaders shy away from vulnerability?" The question lingered, and for a moment Dan faltered. It was an opening, a crack in the armor of his steadfast persona. "I suppose there's a notion that it shows weakness," he admitted, his defenses momentarily lowered. In that moment, Eva seized her chance for a deeper connection. But what he didn't know about himself was that vulnerability could be a strength. It allows teams to innovate, to collaborate more effectively, she pressed, sensing the shift in energy between them. They exchanged perspectives, sparking a lively mental dance that merged their worlds. Condensed thoughts, layered with professional ambition, began to bridge the gap of their differences. As they spoke, she sensed how he wrestled with his ideals of leadership, the dualities of strength and vulnerability wrestling for dominance within him. Yet, in the midst of their conversation, she felt an unsettling uncertainty creep back in. Was she persuading him, or merely offering a compelling narrative that he would dismiss after the meeting? As she watched Dan's facial expressions shift from skepticism to contemplation, she stood at a crossroad. The conversation could pivot, lead them both into uncharted territories where vulnerability might shift not only her fate, but his as well. This was not just a revelation. It was his potential discovery, too. As the hour stretched on, a new idea crossed her mind. Could she inspire Dan not just as his peer, but as a catalyst for his own journey? The stakes had suddenly transformed, shifting her focus from her career alone to a broader influence. And just as she leaned in, driven by this new anticipation, Dan surprised her. "Let us dig deeper into this, Eva," he said, the glimmer of curiosity in his eye inviting further exploration. What course would this take? And if they ventured into these untested waters, where would this dialogue lead them, both a cliff of doubt or a bridge to transformational understanding? The moment brimmed with uncharted potential. The sun stretched through the glass walls of the conference room, illuminating Eva as she stepped into a reality far removed from her previous life. She no longer felt like an outsider in this space that once seemed so foreign. The conversations that had once stifled her now sparked curiosity. Today's meeting with Dan was a venture into boldness, an opportunity to challenge both his beliefs and her OW. As she entered, the familiar gaze of Dan met hers, a flicker of surprise playing across his features. Their discussion had shifted from a one-sided critique to a kinetic dialogue. "I appreciate your willingness to engage," he began, his tone tinged with a mix of sincerity and curiosity. Eva had leaned into her apprehensions, transforming nervous energy into a wellspring of ideas. "Vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's humanity," she proclaimed. Stepping away from mere defense, she engaged him in a conversation that allowed her to express not just her vision, but also reveal her adaptability. "It leads to exploration," she continued, "to creativity in ways that the mechanical approach you favor could never achieve." With each exchange, she recognized an evolution within herself, a dawning realization that genuine strength lay in her ability to articulate her convictions. Feedback from yesterday's presentation had settled into her, merging with newfound courage as she confronted Dan's deeply ingrained skepticism. For so long, she had been confined by limits set by the past, both personally and professionally. But soon, The walls that once boxed her and seemed to dissolve. Dan navigated through his questions, cautious yet curious. What if this openness backfires? What if our competitors use your transparency against us? He asked, his gaze searching hers. The softness of vulnerability held no power to her if it didn't possess resolve. That is always a possibility, but think about the deeper connection we can establish with our clients and within our teams. When we share our struggles, it humanizes our company. If you allow your doubts to cloud your vision, you risk stifling innovation, she asserted, feeling the weight of her words strengthen her presence. As their back and forth continued, she sensed the tide shift. His initial defenses began to ease, revealing layers beneath his hardened exterior. Isn't it more frightening to remain stagnant, to hide behind facades that ultimately do nothing but isolate us? She probed gently, that a moment of silence settled between them, a shared understanding forming like a bridge across their varied perspectives. You raise valid points, he admitted slowly. I've approached leadership via a lens of competition. Seeing it differently and embracing vulnerability challenges everything I believed. As this newfound openness emerged, Eva felt suspended in a moment of triumph, knowing her courage to speak had catalyzed Dan's introspection. The stakes had evolved. What began as a defense of her ideas had blossomed into a cooperative exploration of possibilities. Together, they navigated a reality where harmonizing vulnerability and leadership was no longer an abstract notion, but a palpable path. Their conversation flowed seamlessly, merging into a strategy that encompassed authenticity, emotional engagement, and innovative leadership, a revitalized approach to their business model. By the time the meeting drew to a close, Eva understood she had transcended her insecurities. She had not only defended her beliefs, but also sparked transformation in another all, while growing herself into an unwavering presence of competence. Let us explore this further in the next team meeting, Dan finally proposed, the hint of excitement woven into his voice. They exchanged tentative smiles, each acknowledging the potential that lay ahead. As she stepped out of the room, Eva felt something she had long sought, a profound sense of acceptance within herself, recognition for her courage, and affirmation that her story mattered. In navigating her trials, she illustrated her authenticity and lived through her values, reshaping the narrative. Not just for herself, but for those around her. Awaking today, Eva had embraced a path forged through resilience and boldness. Having transformed skepticism into a collaborative vision, she established her rightful place not just as a participant, but as a leader capable of shaping her surroundings. With solid confidence, recognized competence, and an established position within her team, she was finally prepared to ask for what she wanted: an opportunity to redefine success not just for herself, but for everyone who shared her journey toward authenticity. Now was the time for every viewer to share in the momentum of this story. To experience even more journeys of transformation, you need to subscribe now. Don't let this moment slide by. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and boost the storytelling movement. Comment your thoughts and theories about this conclusion. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this uplifting resolution. Step into the circle of growth. Together, we can understand the importance of genuine, overcoming stories.